boy, oh boy, oh boy. Double pleats. Double pleats. That's fine. That's okay. Because today, in this video, we're gonna talk about how to modernize a suit pant. This procedure, or couple of procedures, is actually gonna be surprisingly, excitingly simple. We've got a pair of suit pants here, and like I mentioned, we do have double front pleats. Okay, I'm going to admit to you, this is what a tailor would call a recut if you wanted to take these out. Essentially, you would take this entire thing apart, take out those pleats, and put it all back together. We're not gonna do that. But we are gonna do two other things that I think are the most modernizing for a pair of suit pants that you may have inherited from grandpa or dad or grandma and still look great. Fabric is in good shape, but we need to spruce it up a little. The first is that we're gonna take in this pant leg and taper that up, make that nice and slim and sleek. And next, we're gonna take off this cuff and just put a plain, flat, regular hem. The best part about these two procedures is that they work best in tandem with each other. So we're gonna mark out where we want that taper, then we're gonna let down the hem, then we're gonna do the taper, then we're gonna finish the hem. And all of that is gonna be this beautiful modernization sandwich of suit pant tailoring. Okay, let's start with the taper. All right, we're gonna do two things to prep for our pinning. First, we're gonna take the inseam measurement. Even though we are removing the cuff, our actual length is good. He likes the length of the pant. So 29 inches is gonna be the final inseam after we've removed this cuff. So we're gonna let that down and then match what we've got here. Then we're gonna transfer the markings from our pinned pant leg. So I have one pant leg pinned to show the taper on the customer. We're gonna transfer these marks to the inside of the pant so that we can take the taper in from there. Let's flip this inside out. All right. So I'm just working with one pant leg at a time, and I'm gonna flatten this leg out in front of me, and where you see it pulled together, that's of course where our safety pins are on the other side. So all I'm gonna do to transfer those markings is I'm starting down here at the cuff, and I'm putting two little chalk marks right there where the safety pin meets. So when I take this safety pin out, you see how we have those two marks now? 1, 2. Let's go up to the next one. I'm trying to get my chalk really close to exactly where those little guys are pinned together. So I'm literally just like rubbing my chalk in there. You see that? Great. And then once I know I've got chalk on either side, that's when I can release the pin from the correct side of the garment. And it literally will just fall open to show me this is how much we are tapering, right? So that makes sense. We're gonna transfer these marks all the way up through the thigh, almost up here to the hip. All right, we've got this pant leg marked all out. One important thing to note right here is the taper could come from the inseam. The choice of taking it from the outseam in this case was that it looked good on the customer. So that's gonna be a matter of perspective. And in this case, I just really like the way that this flowed up into the hip, especially because we are having to keep those double pleats in the front. Now, the taper is marked, time to cut to removing our cuff. So we're gonna let down the stitching that's holding that hem up so we can release the cuff completely and get it hemmed back up at that correct length. We've jumped down to the hem here, and this hem is held up by a blind stitch, which is very difficult to see by design. So it's almost invisible and held together by this filament style thread. You see how it's very thin? It's about half the weight of our normal thread. The machine that does this style blind stitch, called a blind hemmer, has one needle, one thread, no bobbin, just a bent needle that's literally wrapping this filament thread around the edge of the hem and the pant picking up tiny fibers in between to hold it in place as invisibly as possible. The great news is this is not quite a chain stitch, but it is looped together on itself, which means if we cut a few of the initial threads, we can gently pull this thread and it will start to unloop itself. Let me see if I can show you. There is just barely a loop right here. And I'm gonna pull that each time I pull this thread. Boom. You see how it pops out? This is the cleanest, easiest way to remove blind stitching. And any blind stitch thread done by blind stitch machine will come out this way. It's nice, easy, clean. Sometimes it pulls off, then you'll just get another run started. So that's how we are going to cleanly and quickly pull out the stitching that's holding this hem up. The last thing that we'll do to release this hem is jump to the correct side, and on either seam there will be a little bit of regular straight stitching, and that is what's holding the cuff up on the outside, along with a really good, hard, heavy press. So we'll just slide our seam ripper in between. See, they didn't even go all the way down. And they match it up with the seams because that makes it invisible and harder to pick out. And then boom, look at that. Ooh, a little bit of dirt, huh? Now we have completely unraveled that seam. Awesome. All right, let's go press all of this out so that we can get our old measurement into the new length and get it hemmed up. Okay, we're here at the iron, and we've got a bunch of well-pressed folds from that cuff, and so we are gonna press it back out and give ourselves a flat hem to work with. Perfect. Then we're gonna put back in that 29-inch inseam so that we know where our hem is gonna be. I'm gonna come back up here to the crotch, quick measurement straight down, and then I'll give myself a mark at 29 inches. And then just as a standard in the shop here, we always leave a 2-inch hem allowance. And we have this nifty ruler that I love that is a 2-inch width. And so I'm gonna mark straight across on either side of that ruler, 29 inches for the actual hem, and 2 more inches added on for the hem allowance. That is nice, easy, standard. Okay, we will cut off the extra that we don't need anymore from the longer length of the cuff later. Now we're gonna jump back to marking the taper. The reason I'm doing this way is anytime we are tapering a sleeve or pant leg, we're always gonna release the hem either of the sleeve or the pant leg so that we can take that taper all the way through nice and clean, and then roll that hem back up so that all of our raw edges are enclosed and everything looks nice and tidy. So while we've got the hem open, we are not gonna finish that right now until we've gone in and done the taper. So let's find our chalk marks again that we put in after we remove those safety pins, and we're gonna connect the dots. These are the marks that we transferred from our safety pins earlier. More importantly, you can see that they don't really fall in a clear straight line. What we're trying to do is balance between a nice curve coming off of the hip, but then a nice straight line coming down. Otherwise, we'll give the impression, if we curve this line too much, that the customer is bow-legged, and we really don't want to do that. So we're going to strike a balance of drawing in a line that incorporates as much of these marks as possible while also straightening the line as much as possible. One of the ways that I love to do that is by using a hip curve ruler. So the hip curve ruler, we're gonna place the end that looks like a hip up closer to his hip. That's how we're gonna do the merge from the stitching that's already there out to where our first line is. So even right here you can see, look how I didn't get all the way to that line. That's important. We're really taking a little bit of creative license here to try to match the body and incorporate the take-in while not making this line too curved and wonky. After we get our kind of merge point in, this is when we're going to try to get it straighter. So now I'm going to use my straight edge of my ruler to try to shoot out towards that next point. And again, we'll work down the pant leg, aiming for our next point while knowing that we cannot necessarily hit all of the points exactly. As I get further down the leg, really important, and this window pane pattern helps you even see it clearer. I really want this to be as straight as possible as we go straight down the leg. And you'll notice here we've got the marks that we put in for our hem. We're going to definitely be straight as we're passing over that, because this edge needs to be folded up inside the leg, and all of this needs to be nice and straight. Now you can see the line that I've drawn. I think this is the most important part of a taper. As you can see, I've literally sketched it in. Some of the marks we hit, some we don't, and all of that is an important tailor's creative license. I really have to feel the right movement, right curve to get this right. And even then, we still need the customer to put it on again to make sure that we got that right. And it doesn't balloon out at the hips and peg in really severely as it comes down the leg. So this is one that takes practice, but keep this in mind again. Whatever you pin on the customer, you are gonna balance when you're actually drawing the line in. You're gonna hit some marks, you're not gonna hit other marks. That is okay. What's more important is a nice, smooth, consistent line that merges in and merges out versus a connect the dots, which will never look right. Now, we're gonna take this over and get this sewn on the machine. Before I press anything here, key part. I've got my stitch line in over top of my chalk, so we're gonna transfer these before we proceed. As you can see, I've got my stitch line over top of my chalk line, but I've not pressed anything out. That's really important because I wanna transfer this taper line exactly to the other outer seam pant leg before we proceed. So I'm gonna take that pant leg and flip it directly on top of this one. Now, we have let down the hem, haven't cut anything on the hem, which means we can line these up exactly on top of each other, kind of like we're gonna hang them up. I'm also going to line the pocket bags up so that I know I've got the hip curve together and the hems together. And then I'm gonna gently tug the inseam to make this all nice and smooth and straight. All of these edges, the seam allowance edges, the hem, everything needs to be basically on top of each other so that we can transfer these markings accurately, okay? So I'm smoothing out any wrinkles that I feel underneath, and then I'm actually going to start pinning these pant legs together. Let me show you how. I'm gonna come up here to where I think my first markings are and gently lift that upper leg up. You see how this is right here? I'm gonna put a pin there to keep everything in place and then lift this leg until it exactly matches up with where the chalk is on the other leg and make myself a new mark. See how when I pull it away, you can see it? Great. We're gonna work our way down the leg doing that. And the pins just kind of help me hold everything in place. And then I'm peeking underneath to see where that chalk line is. Chalk line, new chalk line. Great. I'm smoothing again as I go. Every time I lift the pant leg, it's kind of getting a little wrinkled and out of place. And I really need all of that to stay nice and smooth so that we're transferring a perfect mirror image of what we want onto the other leg. Now, bodies are not symmetrical. However, we are starting from an assumption that mirroring identical leg to leg is going to be the best place to start. If more alterations are needed based on the customer's unique body after this, that's fine. We can do that. But to start, we're going to make them symmetric. Right there, perfect. And last one. Put that up there. Great. Awesome. All righty. Now, take all of those pins out and flip that bad boy back to the other side. And now you've got your little chalk lines that'll just need to be connected when we're ready to jump over to this pant leg. Now, we are ready to come back to the stitching that we did and open this seam allowance. This needs to be pressed open to the new stitching line. One last step before we jump back to the ironing board. We are going to press open the seam allowance, but since we're already at the cutting table, I'd like to cut our new hem down. So remember, the cuff requires about triple the amount of hem allowance so that it can be folded up on itself. Since we're removing that, we're going to remove a little bit of the hem allowance so that we only need that 2 inches to flip that straight hem up. As we've already marked the one leg, all we have to do is continue those markings to the other leg, and then we'll cut them off. So I've got the grid on my table here. That's why I'm not taking a measurement for the second pant leg. That's why I'm just continuing the line I've already got, because I know it's right. Everything is gridded up and good to go. Alrighty. Let's slice it off. This is another great task for my arm board. I love to get the pant leg up here because I really only want to press this one seam that we're opening up. So I'm going to slide my pant leg onto the arm pressing board and then gently pull apart the seam allowances that I just opened. So they're all folded up on themselves, and we just want to make them nice and clean. Now, one thing that you will notice is there is quite a bit of seam allowance, probably more than you'd be comfortable leaving. In our case, we are going to leave all of that in. In the business of alterations, we are always trying to give ourselves a little bit of extra room to come in and out based on the customer's preference and future. So we personally are going to leave all of this extra seam allowance in this side seam. Now, if he tries it on later, loves it, but there's a little bit of bulkiness showing on the outside, that's fine. We'll serge it out then. But I really like to take this in stages, especially when we're doing something like this modernization where we're souping up this pant, and we're going to take it in steps, take it in stages to make sure he likes everything that we're doing as we do it before we take away any material that we can't put back. So this is beautiful now. We've got this nice flat outer edge seam, and now we are ready to serge our hem, get it pressed up, and that is it. One quick note, we're going to finish the hem right now, but don't forget you've got another pant leg. This is when you want to stop and finish the taper on the other pant leg, and then jump back to this part where we're going to serge it and turn it up. Perfect. I just finished serging the edge of this, and that is really just to cover that raw edge. If you don't have a serger, zigzag is fine in this case. Now, remember we left a 2-inch hem allowance. So even though I can still see my chalk line here, which is great, I know because that is our standard here that it's going to be 2 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip that right up. We're still looking at the wrong side of the pant. So the pant is flipped inside out for this one. And I am just going to kind of roll this into position. And I've got my ruler standing by because I love to just check myself really quickly. This is why I love a clear ruler. I love to be able to just slap it right down on top. I have a pretty good idea of what 2 inches looks like at this point, but never hurts to check. And again, when we're working with a pant that has any kind of pinstripe, window pane, anything like that, it makes it even easier to line it up because you're gonna go with that pattern. Now, I gave it a little bit of heat this way. I'm gonna pick it up and give myself a 180-degree turn like this and do it again. This is a total personal thing, but I've noticed over the years when we're tapering a pant that has a crease, any kind of suit pant usually has a gentle crease of some kind down the front. I'm trying to even up the ironing in the hem because we will have to put that crease back in. Honestly, the dry cleaner will probably put that crease back in, but we're going to make this hem as round as we can, and I'm flipping back and forth to do that. Awesome. This is all set to be blind stitched up. So we'll run that through our machine real quick and then take a few final measurements. We've flipped the pants out to the correct side now. We've finished the taper, we've finished the hem, and now we're gonna press back in not only this new, beautiful, crisp hem without the cuff, but also a new crease on the tapered pant leg. This is a really important one because the crease usually comes standard in any suit pant. And now that we've narrowed that leg with the taper, the crease is kind of off. It's gonna be shooting off in one direction the wrong way, not straight up and down the leg. So I am just lining these pant legs up on top of one another and seeing where that crease is, flattening everything out. Now, I will tell you, I can do a pretty good job with my iron here, but you know the best way to get that crease really semi-permanently pressed back in is to have this pant dry cleaned after the alteration is done. And the reason is because the dry cleaner has a hydraulic press. So what I'm doing by hand with my iron, they are actually going to set onto a machine with a hood that is gonna really seal that in. So that would be the last finishing touch for this pant modernization process. Alrighty, that is it. So we tapered, we removed the cuff, we re-hemmed, we have completely facelifted this beautiful pair of pants. Ask me questions, leave me comments, like, subscribe, all the things, and we'll see you at the next one.